So I just want to say, what is a special interest group? So this meeting today is going to be from special interest group. You'll hear about ThreadX, and most importantly, you'll hear about Rust, which is a programming language. Here, Florian, who's going to give a presentation today. We're going to have a couple of class, and tomorrow there's going to. So special interest groups are very lightweight collaborative structure that we as a case have foreseen to talk and exchange around a particular topic. And the goal of the SIG is to enable the members to basically work together on these topics. So I'm just gonna go next because yeah. And the operational is very light. And they are self-sufficient, they are managed by members. The special interest here. This is a role that is very important, and basically the chair and drives essentially the discussions around this. Then is a non-governing body inherits and inherits and adheres to the work practice. So it's like a subgroup of special interest within a certain group. How do we start one? So we already have a couple. We are gonna be soon see another one. But if you have a special topic that is going to collaborate and connect out to the requirements of the special interest group within the working group, you can always work on a proposal. Every member of the work can come up with it. There is then a general mailing list around it. We need to have support members and great working day. If 3 or more member organizations say that they are in the creation of, then this is formally approved by the steering committee. The steering committee has formally approved both the ThreadX working special interest group and a Rust. Yeah, so I just want to quickly say how we are structured as of today. So we have our governing bodies, the steering committee, technical advisory committee, marketing committee. We have the special interest group. We have our project that are under the umbrella of the working group. And soon we will even work on an LTD. So we are very excited by how things are moving. They are.
Thank you for joining us here. It's good to see so many of you. And I just want to give you a couple of updates regarding ThreadX. As you know, this is the first special interest group that we formed as part of our working group, which was followed by the Rust SIG. So just want to give you a couple of updates regarding it. Okay, so first of all, what is ThreadX? Well, it's the first open source embedded real-time operating system which is actually certified for safety critical applications. And when I say certified, I really mean certified by the TÜV organization. So it has a stamp and everything on it, right? And the intention is to keep following through with those certifications. What exactly it consists of? Well, it has mainly 5 components: ThreadX, FileX, USBX, NetX Duo, GUIX, and a tool that sort of connects all of them, which is called TraceX. It's quite small and makes use of very few resources, and that is why it's a very good RTOS to be used in the automotive sector, because we're looking there for really very small environments that use very little resources. So really good on runtime, really good on memory usage and allocation. As I was saying before, there are safety certifications already obtained for this RTOS. It's been certified by SGS TÜV for a couple of safety standards. So the generic one, the 61508, but then also for medical, railway, and automotive in particular. It is compliant with MISRA C, because, by the way, it's been developed in C, and it's also been certified by UL. So we intend to continue with these certifications, which is also why we have started the SIG interest group around ThreadX. It's our intention to also bring an addition sort of organization around the project so that we can create the funding for supporting those certifications. So jumping through it, yeah, it's an open source project. It's fully operational, by the way. So the source code is in the Git repository. You can just take it, use it, develop on top of it if you are feeling up to it already. We have the special interest group already approved for some time yet. The first meeting is now, and the actual first meeting of the SIG is going to be on the 10th of June. So I believe that's next Monday. So stay tuned, join the mailing list, join the meetings, get connected. We're building the community around this. And finally, getting to what I was saying around the funding for these certifications, we intend to start a so-called ThreadX Alliance. This is a name that still needs to be confirmed. We have built a stack of slides to be presented to the board. So this is already in discussion with the board. We're just waiting for the approval to start this. This structure is supposed to enable the non-Eclipse members also to support the ThreadX project financially, and also it gives them the opportunity to purchase the actual functional safety related documentation. So not just take the source code and take the certifications, which are the result of going through the certification investigations, but also the actual artifacts that lead to that certificate in the end. So where exactly everything fits, it's practically, we already have the project, again, open source. We now have the SIG, which is part of the SDV working group. And around this, we'll also have the ThreadX, the alliance around ThreadX. The project, as you already know, is under the purview of the SDV working group for some time now. The SIG already exists as part of the working group. So all it needs is for us to get this alliance up and running so we can get the funding support for these certifications going forward. Now, the rationale behind having this alliance put together, well, first of all, there is significant interest around ThreadX coming from all different, let's say, industries, okay? There wasn't that much interest towards Eclipse membership from the current and potential ThreadX adopters. So this could change over time, but we need to be open to those people as well, right? We don't want to be exclusive of them. And finally, the SIG itself enables the foundation to have a full long-term sustainability of the project itself, maintain and enhance the safety and security certifications, support the project to fulfill its purposes and also the foundation's purposes around it. And it intends to establish and promote a healthy commercial ecosystem around it. Here are some links that you can, I definitely encourage all of you to use. So first of all, it's the website, which is already up and running. It will keep being updated. So we're making updates on it on a weekly basis already. There are some communication channels that you can use. So the general mailing list that please join if you're interested on following what's going on with the project. There's a matrix set of channels that have been set up already, which I encourage you to join. And there's also the link to the actual project page where you can also see how the contributions are made, who's involved, who's leading the project, who are the main contributors, and so on. And finally, whom you should be contacting in the future or even now for further questions, it's actually Frédéric Debian, who is the embedded and IoT program manager. He's not here with us today, unfortunately, because he just came back from a conference in Helsinki, so he didn't manage to get over here as well. But feel free to contact him even during these days. So he'll be more than happy to take some calls with you. Just make sure you get in touch with him and set up some calls. And me, if you have any technical questions, any questions related to certifications, by all means, contact us and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions.
Good morning to our guests. Michael, good morning. I'm very happy to have you here. Yeah, and all friends around the globe. Welcome to Sindelfingen. You can see here our plant, 100 years of history. I invite you to make a factory tour. It's very interesting where software meets hardware, real hardware that you can drive. We stand at the forefront of the automotive evolution here. Thank you for joining us here at the Mercedes-Benz Customer Center. I think another great facility to make such an event here. This event promise to be a dynamic and forward-thinking as the technology we discuss here. I'm Jochen Strenkert, your host for this event. I hold the privilege of being the chief engineer of MBOS, the Mercedes-Benz operating system, and alongside my dedicated team, I'm also responsible for the FOSS mandate within Mercedes-Benz Research and Development. And in this dual role, this places me at the intersection of compliance and creativity, ensuring that our vehicles not only adhere to the highest standards, but also contribute to open source and innovation. And we heard a lot about that criticality for our embedded automotive components to be ASPICE compliant, to be safety compliant. That's a crucial topic, I think. Yeah, our mission is simple and yet profound. Embrace FOSS. This is not just a statement, it's a commitment from our side that guides our actions every day, including today, as we gather to exchange ideas, to push boundaries of what's possible. And honestly spoken, we have always the challenge here with a long tradition that we make FOSS contributions, but we have also the challenge internal to make our contribution in an inner source mentality available. Yeah, so that's our challenge too. Over the next 2 days, we will explore the complexities of software-defined vehicles, a field that's rapidly transforming our automotive landscape. This event is our canvas to reinforce existing partnerships and to ignite new ones, to brainstorm and to build the future together. An example is our joint project OpenDAT, where we work on a virtual and real integration testing ECUs. We will hear more about this later on, and perhaps you know that I personally have a longer history in this topic. Let's take the moment to reflect on our journey so far. In November 23, we celebrate the second Mercedes-Benz FOSS convention in another very, very smart building at the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Untertürkheim, at the plant where Mercedes-Benz was founded more than 130 years ago. More than 200 participants from various sectors joined us. We were very proud of this event, and it was a melting pot of ideas and enthusiasm. And I'm filled with a pride that we continue to foster these connections today in our customer center here in Sindelfingen. The rise in complexity of the software within our products and systems have been significant. Yet it's a challenge we have tackled with enthusiasm and determination. FOSS has become the cornerstone of our approach, allowing us to navigate the regulatory landscape while keeping the spirit of the collaboration. It's a challenging path, especially for the aspects of our vehicles that are under strict regulation. But we are committed to exploring every avenue to FOSS. The excitement feels for the FOSS is mirrored in the energy in this room. Professionals from the automotive sector, the IT industry, and the open source community, all united by a shared vision. This agility, this momentum of co-creation is what drives us to achieve the extraordinary. At Mercedes-Benz, we don't just want to be participant in the open source community, we aim to be active, contributing partners. Our engagement within the projects and the initiatives like the Eclipse SDV is a reflection of this ambition. By investing in projects such as OpenPath, OpenDUT, IFX and CVI, we are not just building our MBOS software stack, we are contributing to a larger ecosystem, one that thrives a shared knowledge in progress. And you will hear later on a little bit much more. We're in intensive contact with Michael to foster this system by more contribution also from our side. Our involvement spans across numerous activities like AutoSAR, Linux Foundation, Eclipse Foundation and Covesa. But it's the Eclipse SDV working group that stands as a guiding light connecting the dots between the most influential movements in the software-defined car space. That's why I personally to the according special interest group. I'm so happy to announce that we have brought one of our vehicles today outside there. It's a new E-Class with our latest infotainment system. Thanks to Thilo, for making this possible. We will hear more of the according project later, but the idea with this is to have the exchange to our test code in the real world scenario, whilst so far the testing was mainly possible in an artificial laboratory environment. I'm curious how it works. I invite you. I invite you to engage fully, to ask the hard questions, to share your insights. Your expertise is the fuel that we will drive our discussions and our innovations. In closing, I want to say thank you for your presence, whether you are with us here or joining from the internet. I wish you an exciting experience filled with interesting discussions, new learnings, and above all, an enjoyable time here with us at Mercedes-Benz during the Eclipse SDV Community Day. Welcome. Yeah, let's start the exchange and knowledge exchange begin. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Actually, I wanted to start exactly with this joke that if your name is Florian, then obviously you have to do something with the Rust. Do you have some control over the slides? Okay, thank you. So let's start with some words about me. I'm with Electrobit for almost 2 decades now. I started as a C++ programmer, and one of my first tasks was to port our old navigation system that we had back then from Windows to QNX. It was kind of half running on Linux already. Yeah, but my job was to get it running on QNX. And this is something which followed me my whole career, because we are using QNX very often in many projects. And yeah, so I had to ensure that our code works on QNX basically all the time. I have no experience or had no experience with compilers. How are they implemented internally? Same for standard library. This is maybe interesting for something I'm going to say later. And I was quite a C++ fanboy. I am guilty of making stupid, unnecessary jokes about people who did not use C++, like Java developers. It was unnecessary. I'm sorry for that. And what might be interested, I was never interested in Rust. I was aware that Mozilla had this kind of side project for their Firefox browser, but to me it was always a thing, yeah, there is just one company behind it. If they decide to drop this project, it would just be gone. So I was never really interested in the language. Yeah, and then February 2021, I think I have read this announcement on the 9th of February. So this is the exact date when I became interested in Rust. The Rust Foundation was now created by several big companies. So in addition to Mozilla, also Google, Amazon / AWS, Hawaii, Microsoft have been behind this language. And this made me curious. Why are so huge companies behind this language? There has to be more about this than just the Firefox browser. So I started to read a little bit about it, and I was getting excited more and more every day, the more I read about it, that things that you have to do daily, like documenting your code, compiling your code, running the code, things like coding guidelines, how do I indent my code or indent? Where do I put the opening braces? These are things that kept us busy at Electrobit from time to time. There have been a lot of discussions. We have spent a lot of time with tools like CMake. And Rust seems to be very, very interesting and making things easier. So I started to talk to some managers, whether it would make sense to give it a try. Yeah, but then there is this thing about QNX support that we didn't have. And that was kind of a blocker. Yeah, so I needed some weeks to think about this issue. And then at one point I thought, hey, maybe it's not the compiler who has to support an operating system. Maybe it's actually the standard library. Let's give it a try to build something without standard library. And just give it a try. And I had some commands which are maybe similar to that. They are certainly not exactly these. But I somehow got something very small running. It's not really an Hello World application, because for Hello World, I would need the standard library to print out text. But I could do some simple calculations there, and just to see, okay, basically it seems to be running. Maybe I'm on a good path there. So let's continue with that. And yeah, then I took the Linux version of the standard library. I have built everything for Linux and tried to link it and get it running on QNX, which I know today quite nonsense, which couldn't work. You see this long list of linker issues, and so this was already in October 2021, where I finally asked at Stack Overflow, hey, does someone know about this? Is there, how do I fix that? Yeah, but it seems to be quite complicated. I also didn't know back then how to contact the Rust community, which is why I've used Stack Overflow. And this was then some some time to get back to my actual project, do other things, let it be for some time until spring 2022, when I finally got some free time, and some managers granted me 10 days, 10 working days, 2 weeks to work on that. So I massaged the standard library and still compiling actually for Linux and trying to somehow get it work on QNX. And finally, I think not on the 10th day, but on the 8th in the afternoon, I got something running. Happy, excited. I could do things like Hello World. I could work a little bit with containers, but somehow it still was not working correctly. For example, you could see that I'm trying to create a file there, and this only worked when the file already existed. I could override it, but if I deleted the file, then this just wouldn't work. And on the next day, I learned, hey, the standard library is using a crate called libc, which defines some magic values, like shown here below. Maybe the developers of you have seen this before. If you ask an operating system to open a file, you have to provide some flags like this O_crate. And QNX and Linux have a different understanding about the value there, which is the reason why it wasn't working. But yet, it was successful enough to buy me another 2 weeks to work on that and then smoothing out rough edges. I learned that there is a great test suite provided by the Rust language. Also for the libc crate, there are a lot of automatic tests, which helped a lot to get things running. So after, I think 2 or 3 additional iterations, it was working very fine. And we started to think about open sourcing these changes. So far, they have been just some internal fork. But we thought, maybe it makes sense to open source our changes. And we got in contact with BlackBerry, and unfortunately, we got some support from them, worked together. And then end of 2022, we finally created our pull request to the Rust project. We had this great press release together with BlackBerry. Soon after that, I think in March 2023, it got finally be part of the official Rust toolchain. So now if you want to build for QNX, it's part of the official toolchain. And what I have learned along this path is that the standard library is actually supporting a lot of different operating systems, like, 20 or something. And adding another one is quite simple. This is something we can do quite easily. I got some feeling that when the stuff that I'm building compiles, that often it seems to just work. This was something I did not expect. But it was an observation, hence the 4 question marks. And open sourcing the changes was simple, it was fun. And in the midterm, I have learned that it was very good for the quality. And it reduced our efforts significantly. We have saved a lot of money by open sourcing those changes. We now have kind of a community which cares about QNX support. Also, 2 people from Faro Systems joined the effort of providing QNX support to Rust, thanks to Florian. But we also have other people who care about different third-party libraries and adding QNX support to that. So I really can recommend doing the same. Yeah, but how can I convince a customer that now that I have a tool chain to allow me to use this code while I just have some simple test applications? Would you give me money to implement something huge and all the trust that I can give you is some simple test applications? I don't think so. So we needed something bigger. I've been in the lucky situation that one of my colleagues who has a lot of experience in implementing cluster instruments with very different frameworks from Kanzi to EB Guide and several HTML frameworks. He had some free time between two projects, roughly 6 weeks, and he already had 2 weeks of Rust experience. Basically, it was 1 week of reading the book and another one gaining some practical experience with small Rust quizzles. And he was excited to learn something new. To make it not this easy, I selected a framework no one at Electrobit has heard before, which is the Bevy framework. But there are nice YouTube tutorials. So I told him, hey, Norman, watch these tutorials. Good luck. I'm going on vacation now. What we also provided to him have been some mock-ups about the HMI so that he has some idea how the result should look like, assets like PNG files, so that he could really concentrate on the HMI. Yeah, and then after 6 weeks, this is what he has accomplished. He told me that with the other tools that he has worked before, where he had much more experience, he would not have been faster. He would need roughly the same time, which is very interesting in my opinion, and speaks for the language and also the Bevy framework. What you can also see there is this Edge browser window. It took me like 1 hour to get it running on a browser. And this is insane. I mean, we had some software which was running on Windows, and getting it running in a browser in a very performant way was a matter of 1 hour. So that's really crazy. And yeah, then it was not yet running on QNX, but getting it running on QNX was, yeah, something like an hour. We have this hardware which I brought with me, where you can connect up to 12 displays, and the only thing that we needed to implement is basically telling QNX where to render, on which display should it appear. And yeah, this was very surprising to me. The Bevy framework has something like 2 million lines of code, and getting it running on QNX was basically no work at all. We needed to implement a little bit of code to tell it on which display do we want to render on, and that's it. And it just worked. It did not crash. And this kind of portability was something I have never experienced before in those 1.5 decades where I was working on different operating systems. So that was very, very interesting to me. One coding thing, for at least some of you might be interesting, which is very Bevy specific, but I wanted to show it just to give you some idea how Rust can make things easier. We have this function, startup calculate values. It's not important what it does exactly. It gets 4 parameters on the left, and all I'm doing is telling, hey, Bevy, please run this function whenever you are rendering a new frame. I'm not telling it how to do that. I can specify arbitrary parameters there. I can add, for example, this parameter on any position. I could also shuffle around all the parameters. It will just work. And Bevy does not know this function, or at least the framework itself. This is something I can define as a user. I define what data do I need. And Bevy takes care about everything else. This is very nice to implement features, to modify features. If I just need more data, then I just specify it there, and everything else is done automatically. And maybe you have heard about the borrow checker issues in Rust, which are often said as one of the reasons why it is hard to learn Rust. We almost never had such issues. In Bevy with this concept where you have kind of global variables and you just specify what data you want to have, where the state is stored, you just get it, and that's all. So that's very, very interesting from a technical point of view. Okay. So in my opinion and experience, learning Rust is not as hard as many people say. Norman had 2 weeks of experience and could implement new features. We extended the demo also for the embedded world, which you can see here, and tomorrow I will show it again. There I took another colleague with 0 Rust experience and told her, okay, here 2 or 3 videos about Rust, a few videos about Bevy, and within 1 week, including learning, she has been able to implement some small feature there. So it's not so hard as long as you don't try to write perfect code. If you try to minimize CPU load, for example, to the optimum, or RAM usage and so on, if you try to minimize boilerplate code, for example, then things get complicated. And mastering Rust is, in my opinion, very, very hard. It takes a long time. But implementing simple things is simple in Rust. And usually when it compiles, it just works. Yeah, portability is, in my opinion, absolutely crazy. This is something I've never experienced with any other language before. One thing I really want to emphasize is Rust is not perfect. You cannot walk on water just because you are programming in Rust. And especially the people like me who really love the language and see a lot of benefits in it, and there are a lot of benefits. It's important for us to say that it is not perfect. There are some small rough edges. It is going to improve over time, which is in itself another issue because the language evolves very quickly and you need to keep on learning. But in general, it helps a lot. It saves you so much time, so much trouble. I've experienced so much overtime and working on Saturdays because of crashes. These are things that you usually don't have in Rust at all, and this is where it really shines. And also, open sourcing things is very fun. Please do that. It's good for your quality. It's good for your money to do that. If you have some private forks with private changes, go ahead, open source them. It's really worth it. Okay, we have some time for questions. The last slide is not so interesting, so I would go back to this. At least I would try to go back to the animation. Ah, there it is. So, time for questions if you have some. Yes, please. Pardon? We have a customer project where we have a cluster instrument a little bit like this without Bevy, but written in Rust, which is going into serial production. And this demo helped to get this project.
While the slides are getting put up, hello, I'm Florian. I'm one of the co-founders of First Systems, but I'm also one of the co-founders of the Rust Foundation, and I've been member of the Rust core team. I'm none of that anymore. I'm not involved in those two organizations anymore. I have 10 years of Rust experience, so now finally the recruiters that do ask for 10 years of Rust experience slowly can find people that can actually fulfill that. The other fun thing is competence in Rust is a really odd thing. We've been polling for years now how much experience people have, and in 2018 on our Rust survey, we had 3 people answering that they have 10 out of 10 experience in Rust. And we made we have this email called all@rustlang.org. Now you know of it. Don't send emails to it because it literally goes to all Rust team members. And we ask people for like, hey, by the way, who of you answered 10 out of 10? And it was none of the Rust team members and definitely none of the language designers. You can't really fully learn a language. No. Okay. Also, apologies on the slide messes with the slides. This is entirely on me. I had a really rough train ride yesterday, and I wasn't even sure if I'm going to make it because of the flooding in southern Germany. So, yeah. So first of all, thanks to Florian for the good Rust introduction, because I decided to skip that one. Everyone knows Rust already. There was the desire, and I was approached about, hey, shall we run a Rust special interest group within the Eclipse SDV? And the first question is, what's the reason and why should we run one? And I really, really like blunt reasons. There is a lot of Rust going on in Eclipse SDV. There's quite a lot of sizable projects that are implemented in Rust. So it makes perfect sense to actually start a discussion forum around that, or some kind of forum around the usage of that technology. It's still a nascent technology. There's a lot of questions, like, for example, the question, hey, is anyone using that in any customer projects? And it's actually quite useful to have a forum, kind of an open forum to ask those questions. And I'm really happy that you asked that question, and also taking it back to a little bit on how the Rust project worked. It is useful to have an informal, trusted place where you can ask these questions, where kind of like it's not a public thing on stage or something like that, where you can say, hey, by the way, where's this going? What's the general gut feeling? Interestingly, that was a role that another part that I was responsible of in the Rust project played, which was the community team. There's an email that you can send emails to, which is community@rustlang.org. If you have any kind of Rust questions and you do not know where to point them at, that's the email to send it to. There's people on the other end who know people in the project or outside of the project or anything that may be able to answer your questions. Anything goes. And you'd be surprised on how often we got this question. It's like, hey, where's this thing going? Is that actually serious? Are we seeing that industrial deployments? It's depending on where Rust currently is. The questions in 2015, for example, when the language was released, was, are there even people using it? Is this just a fun thing? It comes out of Mozilla Research and all of these kind of things. So discussion groups make a lot of sense to target towards that. So there's a slight lag here. Okay, so when we proposed the group to the Eclipse SDV mailing list 2 weeks ago, that was we had some discussions before with some people just checking if there's general interest, and then we proposed a Rust document to the group. I'd like to sum up the feedback that came from it, except the positive, hey, yeah, let's form this. Particularly, there was a desire for, can we please work on artifacts rather than making this a discussion group? I think that's a huge problem that people have nowadays in open source projects. It's so easy to pick up a discussion. It's also something that maintainers experience quite often. If they put something up for discussion somewhere, there's a lot of conversations that go nowhere. It's not a problem. Speaking is important, but also getting into a vibe of, let's make this have some kind of impact, and the impact in our case is code or any other kind of artifact is important. There was a huge desire for an Eclipse SDV focus. One of the things that I heard in multiple discussions is Eclipse is broad. in general, does it make sense for other working groups at some point to also have a Rust group, or is it just, for example, an offer that SDV can make to the rest of Eclipse? Hey, by the way, if you have Rust questions, here's the SIG, you can ask them questions. There was a particular request for automotive focus, though that's one of the side discussions that I found interesting. If we, for example, look at ThreadX, ThreadX does not just have automotive certifications, it also has medical certifications and others. So when we're talking about, for example, safety practices, of course, SDV is automotive focused. However, a lot of activities that automotive does do make sense in a lot of other contexts. So it is useful to discuss a little bit and to exchange experience there. And it also integration and collaboration with other working groups in or outside of the Eclipse Foundation. There's a couple of working groups being set up in other foundations, also in the Rust Foundation, that people are aware of. And there's the question is like, are we doing double work, or are we setting up a cluster of groups that have slightly different focus but collaboration happening? So that was the summary of the email discussions. Okay, so why am I here? This group is essentially not as formed as the ThreadX group yet. Much more, this is actually a good place to start getting the group together. So what am I searching for, particularly in these 2 days? I would like, out of my experience as a community organizer, I would like to have 4 people committed to running this group. The reason why I want 4, one is always on holidays, one is sick, and it's always useful to have a group that rotates through. And we found in my meetup experience, 4 is the number where it changes from, oh my God, I have to run the meeting again, to cool, it's my turn. And that's precisely the number I would like to meet, that everyone who organizes these things actually looks forward to the next moment where it's their turn. And that needs quite a lot. So even if we find more than 4, that's fine. Just having a group that, for example, also is your fallback, so that people, so when I was running meetups, we always had the rule of families first. So if a kid got sick, someone would just be like, they would just write into the group, hey, I can't run the meetup tonight. And you'd have 3 other people who'd be like, okay, sure, I can do that. I'll be there. So having quite a few people running something is very early on very useful. Particularly people who are interested in making the meetings happen, facilitating the discussions, having each other's back, also keeping the load off the Eclipse SDV general structure. It's good if we can do things our own. I'm more than happy with the organization team here running things, but we also need to be cautious of their time. I'd like to figure out initial projects and activities, particularly because of the desire to focus this on artifacts. What are the first things that we feel like are achievable, that we can work on, and that we can get started on in the coming weeks? And particularly another thing is participation and experience from the existing Eclipse SDV project. So if you are running one of those Rust projects that I mentioned, please get in touch with me and we'll figure out how we can put that in, or if you have specific needs that we can maybe cover. So yeah. There we go. This is the future. I've been running whole trainings with this for 3 days where the slides were lacking the speaker for 5 seconds, and this is really weird if you're trying to explain something. So this is the thing that I wrote as a scope to the email, to the Eclipse SDV email list. And I'd like to go through that just very quickly. So as focus areas initially we defined, and I'd like to work on that also during these 2 days. The first focus point is exchange experience and discuss opportunities and challenges around the adoption of Rust in the automotive and other safety critical industries. That is also, this is particularly an edit that we made. Automotive first, but experience from other safety critical industries where it's useful are more than welcome. Create and publish documents for practical guidance. This is not necessarily standards or things like that, but it's still useful for a group that does a lot of Rust to explain, hey, by the way, these are ways on how you can structure your Rust code. These are, for example, frameworks that are available for certain kind of tasks. I know that Eclipse is not that much into recommending specifically that situation, but making people aware, hey, by the way, this is something that is being used and this is the experience that we have with it. It's always useful. Advise and promote Rust-based SDV projects, so particularly also making sure that we are aware and that we promote that there's Rust happening within the Eclipse SDV. And promotion and potential future creation of open source tooling. This is the biggest question I get on Rust. How do we do things like timing analysis and all of these kind of things on Rust code? And the general answer is you can kind of get it to work, but there's still a lot to be done to make it run well. And yeah, and particularly also collaboration with the Rust Foundation that has taken an interest in those activities. Now it jumped. Should go back one. I'm a little bit surprised there's a slide missing, or I may have jumped over that slide. Just to inform you, there's tomorrow, I would like to take an hour of the open collaboration to actually sit around and discuss all of these topics. Anyone who's interested, please join us at the table. Also, there's going to be something called a fishbowl discussion that I'm going to moderate also tomorrow in the morning. Fishbowl is a discussion format that is meant for less panelists, more like structured discussion along a group. It works in a way where everyone who sits in the audience can always pick up a seat on stage, and so that we can have a pretty equal discussion for about an hour instead of me being on stage for half an hour and telling you how things work. So I'll be moderating that, and I'd be very interested in you all having a conversation about Rust. And to boil it down again to rather simple principles, I think there's a good combination between putting Rust focus in and taking two of the main principles of the Eclipse Foundation, actual running code, and Roth consensus, not full consensus, into that group. And I'd really like to figure out if we can put that into a charter in the coming weeks. Thank you very much. We have time for questions? We have time for questions? Good. Any questions from the audience? Maybe in 2 weeks. Let's figure out something here. I'd like to get the organizers first. So I'd really like to get the organizers here. And then propose a meeting with them. Again, I'd like to discuss what success, like the problem I always have is in my position, it's really easy for me to force goals onto people. This is something that I experience a lot, but like I can always go and say, I have 10 years of experience with Rust. So it actually like to make sure that we have a success definition by the end of tomorrow. But precisely answering that question. And that's why I'm actually going to keep back saying that on stage. I have a couple of ideas, but the problem is there's a chance that if I say my ideas, those are going to be the ones tomorrow morning. This is actually a huge problem that I had just as an experience share that I had in the Rust community team. I was part of the Rust community team because I was doing Ruby before. By the way, there's this other naming thing. If languages start with RU, they're good. And this is a huge problem that I experienced in the community team, that a lot of activity was blocked because I was unavailable to bless it, while I wanted to have a team that can work. Like, well, all my blessing was like, well, you're a community team member. Sure, you're entitled to do that. Just go. Yeah. Let's go. Okay, if you have so who has to no some amount of stake in Rust, but also experience in moderating discussions and actually in moderating discussions and running activities that lead towards a goal. Like if you have any experience or interest in that, in this kind of like getting a group of people to work towards common niche goals. I know, again, Rust consensus means sometimes it's also just okay to say, hey, by the way, we don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution here. So we'll just, the end is just, we're not going to pick up something there. So if you have experience with that, organizational experience is much more important than Rust experience, obviously Rust interest. Both. Rust consensus is needed. Rust consensus is how we do it. The problem here, by the way, just as my experience in Rust does not follow Rust consensus. It does follow full consensus, and that has other problems. Sometimes very useful because everyone's on board, but it also has the issue that it's very easy to block things.
Okay, so my name is Martin Tiede. I'm with Accenture Industry X, but I work for a group called ESR Labs. Actually, ESR Labs is a company which was acquired by Accenture in 2020, and we've been doing automotive software since many years. So, company was founded in 2012, but we've been doing automotive software since 20 years. And today I want to take the chance to give you a quick first glimpse on a project we are proposing to Eclipse SDV. And it's called OpenBSW. Next slide, please. So what is it? It's a software stack for microcontroller-based ECUs. Why are we doing that? Actually, this is an approach we are following ourselves for a very long time. And the thing with microcontroller-based ECUs is that we see that with current solutions, it's not that attractive to developers. There is a lot of problem, I would say, with integration in CI CD pipelines, and with traditional approaches, we also see lack of openness for innovation. So we hope to provide something which is maybe a new or a fresh way of doing this kind of low-level microcontroller ECUs with an open source mindset. We hope to work with you, the community, to actually get even better solutions than we have today. So maybe some more details about the stack itself. It's a C++ stack. It's we intend to have a sorry. We do work on Rust, yes. I mean, it's a step. We are going step by step. So now we are at C. Then now this will be C++, then we are doing Rust. I mean, actually, we are already doing Rust. we like it a lot, but you can see it as an intermediate step. And we still think that there is room for that. Because, for example, on microcontrollers, on ARM M cores, it works, right? But there are other microcontrollers where Rust support is not there yet. But we actually also work on a Rust stack for microcontrollers, but we are not there yet, right? Okay, so we are still C++, which is modern. Well, not anymore, but it used to be modern, and especially it used to be modern in 2004 when we actually started, because we are following this approach since 20 years, and back then no one thought that an automotive ECU can be done with C++, but we did it with C++. Now we kept this concept, and And yeah, this is part of this current solution. We also, one of the features is we support multi-core. We support it in a bit more special way. I mean, things are all a little different. We don't use a multi-core OS. We use FreeRTOS at the moment, but we are also agnostic to use different core operating system kernels. Of course, we have a solution for making it safe, because that's also how we build our ECUs today. I mean, it depends a little bit on what are your safety goals, but for sure there are solutions for safety and security. We have to see what exactly will be part of the open source and what might not be part of the open source. But for sure, this is a major goal. Of course, we have to provide something which in the end you can use to build your safety relevant ECUs. Yeah, it's highly customizable. You can change a lot. You can replace parts of the stack, and that's also what we hope for. I mean, we will provide a UDS stack, for example, in one of the first releases, but there would be ways to, I don't know, have an alternative UDS stack, provide other protocol stacks and things like that. And yeah, to the best of our knowledge, for the purpose of automotive ECUs, we don't think there is a alternative to that yet. Okay, so then I leave it like this. I mean, time is, sorry. So do I have more time? But do I have more time? Should I? I can just wrap it up. I mean, 10 minutes, okay. Okay, so here are a few more details. So as I said, we are using FreeRTOS right now, but the stack comes with an operating system abstraction in C++. So it allows us to plug other operating systems underneath. So for example, Zephyr is another option which we are also evaluating if we can put it underneath. It comes with an STL-like container library, which we call ESTD. It comes with a simple IPC framework for doing your inter-core communication via shared memory. In one of the, not the first release, but in one of the following releases, there will be some RPC framework, where you can actually describe interfaces using a textual language. In the first release, we will have CAN support. We will for sure eventually have Ethernet support, of course. It comes with a UDS stack. That's the first thing we do. We will provide a demo application. We will have one simple demo board, which is this S32K148 eval board, which is, I think, 250 euros or something. So everyone should be able to afford it. It also compiles on POSIX. So you can more or less readily compile your project for your PC, which is very handy because then you can do a lot of your testing if it's not too hardware related, like if you're testing diagnostics or other protocol issues, then you can do this totally on your PC. You don't need a hardware. CMake based, Swings based documentation. Yeah, I think these are the key points. Next slide, please. Yeah, we are hoping to release this soon. I already talked about the contents. We are currently beta testing it internally. Yeah, and we will hopefully have another presentation and then the official contribution soon. And of course, we are interested in your feedback. So now, if there are any questions, we can talk about this now, and otherwise you can get to me or my colleague later on. Thank you. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yes, I mean, it's just another option. I mean, FreeRTOS, Sapphire, ThreadX. These are basically the options. As I said, our stack is operating system agnostic. What we are mostly bringing is the automotive parts, like the automotive protocol stacks. So I don't think it's too complicated to have it running on ThreadX, but we have not evaluated that yet. I mean, for Sapphire, for example, we have already evaluated it, but not for ThreadX yet. But it's definitely on the list. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Actually, I have two questions.
Okay.
One is, I copied the one which Florian got in his presentation. So is that already used somewhere in the C? That's question A. Once that is open source, what is the most wanted or desired contribution from the community to see?
It is used in products for sure. So it's not the exact same software. I mean, we kind of rearranged it a little bit and changed a few things. But the overall approach of having like a C++ based basic software for microcontroller is used. That's something we are doing since 20 years. So it is in vehicles a lot. Yeah. Regarding the contributions, I mean, one thing, for example, is, of course, it's platform support. So we do have our what we call the BSPs, which are mostly customer project specific. So if you have any projects you have in mind and you are envisioning some microcontrollers, then it would also be helpful to contribute to that. So we are also in talks with NXP, for example, for them to contribute our Infineon support, for example, is something we had a very brief talk with Infineon. I mean, these would, of course, be things which would be very helpful to have a broader platform support. Got a question? Our framework is called async. I mean, as you saw it on the slide, I mean, we are talking about. Okay, so I mean, okay, so what it is in our case, it is a way to schedule your code. So basically, you put code in something called we call it a runnable. So and then you can basically run it in some task you want, and you can especially run it cross task. So you use it typically to do event-driven systems. I mean, it's not necessarily a cyclic scheduling. Of course, you can do it. I mean, but it's just a simple way of having something like a runnable, which you can run in various tasks. You can also trigger cross tasks, and yeah, this is how we typically build asynchronous systems, which reacts on event. Yeah, I mean, one of the key things is that you run in a single thread. I mean, if your application runs in a single thread, like in Android, for example, I mean, you don't have a lot of problems, and you can use this to always bring the task context in your task to avoid critical sections, yeah, critical regions. Mm-hmm.
Do you plan to onboard your source as soon as you have gone through the Eclipse Foundation process? IP review, trademark review, and then the creation review. So once the GitHub is available, source code of existing GitHub, you would make your source code available as soon as possible.
We will make it available very soon. I'm not familiar with the processes of Eclipse SDV. That's what my colleagues did, but we plan to have a first release very soon. Yeah.